All set, Scott? Yep. All right, minutes from our November 14th meeting. Any changes or corrections? Greg? Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Dave? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Budget report is attached. Another fairly simple, straightforward. Revenues from our money market and T-bills shown. And the transfer that had to be made from our reserve fund to pay the bills for this month. The bills included salary and for both myself and for the CFO, her second payment. And then we had expenses at Tryon, which was the annual fee for mowing and a monthly bill for the work on a IDA website. The for the mowing, the $7,440, that was the quote that we got from Jim Esper. So we paid him in full. We have since sent that to Winstanley and are waiting their reimbursement for us, to us. And that's it for the month.
He waits all year long to. I know Jimmy. I mean,
And I had to call him and call him and call him and call him. Yes.
That's very good that the money's in our pocket. But why we getting half and half or something? But that's good though.
Yeah, that's good.
He's
So,
paid. He's not worried that we're not going to pay him.
any questions on the budget report?
I'll make a motion.
Todd,
Second.
Joe? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Audit committee, monthly bank reconciliations, Joe, how'd they look?
They look wonderful, lengthy, but good to look through them all.
That
And
seems to be a common adjective that's used.
without a T-bill, I mean,
So
there's 20, whatever, many pages, but it's everything was in order. It's nice that Carol has them all organized for us.
Mhm.
Simple to follow, especially if we've done them a couple
Yep.
times now. Every time we cycle through them, we
Any
understand.
suggested changes to this process? For those who've participated in it? Mike and Joe, Dave?
I think Carol does the best job she can to consolidate it. I think it's just the nature of the beast.
Just because before,
Yeah.
we got the T-bills.
Right.
If we just had one, obviously,
Yeah,
we
if you had one.
cut everything in half, you know,
Right.
with that person. I think it's. I commend her and I think that, you know, it's understandable and I know that we have a method of knowing that where's. Our money is where it's supposed to be.
I mean, to really lighten the load, we could just take all our money out of our investment accounts and just skip the whole process altogether.
Yeah.
That makes more sense to me.
160 a month?
Yeah.
Just avoid reading 12 pages of the text.
All right, moving on to CRG report. Leslie, what do we have?
Well, you have the report
Yes,
in
you
your,
do.
in your packet. Just we're following along with those same things we're putting into the next strategic planning, which is economic housing and tourism. One of them is the brownfield area that I'm sure you're familiar with because we've been talking about it a lot. 120 drums at Fashion Tanning, we're going to take care of. Yeah. And that's a lot. But
Nice that they took care of it.
well, we're pursuing leads, with it, like, it's not checked on the done list yet, but grants, are being pursued to take care of different areas, and we're going to go apply for the EPA grant at 500,000 this time instead of 300,000. So good things, underlying all of that economic development. Also, I want to point out that not only did we have the local effort for the state workforce development with the kids, but we have the Mohawk Valley Regional Economic Development, $600,000 a year grant going to be coming in to support that development we need from all of the areas we want to grow. So that I think is really good news. So other things are coming to completion. Nothing's, you're familiar with this with IDA, nothing's completed yet. It needs a little bit of polishing. but very good, and I just want to, in talking about the strategic plan that we're working on, we're all going to be working on, and we are the strongest partners in that, you and CRG, that Ron was able to work in terms of that advanced manufacturing highway. We got a star on the highway to have our area, our county. as part of that planning. So that's a good thing, you know, so as we're thinking of planning ahead, we're at least on the map, literally. Any questions?
No, I just wanted, I went to the November meeting and I made comment that, I mean, you sit there and hear all the different things that happens, and I said that, you know, you've got a lot of people, because I know Ron said they turned it around within 3 weeks. They had a short one because of the holiday.
Mhm.
And I commended that the CRG was doing a really nice job, and the team really pitches in like that, and the board is
Yeah.
obviously helping out. So, you know, you see, when I look at your notes about economic, housing and tourism, it's really a trifold
Yeah.
approach now that we
Yeah.
have to, we think, so I did commend that the CRG was doing a lot.
Yeah, thanks. It just really feels like we're all like simplifying the message, synthesizing it down to what we can focus on, and that's gonna help us drive all that to, you know, the next set of progress, because it's hard. It's hard to make those, you know, iterations of progress. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah.
Moving on to old business, Nexus Renewables, kind of status quo, still trying to work with Verio to get a easement, that they need along their property line to, run their, lines from their solar facility to the connection point, into, grid. We spoke with Virio's attorney. He hadn't seen the easement yet, so I got a copy of it and sent it to him, and hopefully we try to get that moved along. With the Win Stanley, project,
Can we go into executive on that?
Bill's making a motion to go into executive for the purposes of
You
discussing
do that right now.
property acquisition.
Jim, you want to do it now, right?
Yeah, if you want, yeah.
So would you like me to leave?
No, you can
So
say,
I think she's,
okay, would someone second Joe's, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We're into executive session at 8:10 a.m. Into open session at 8:34 a.m. Okay, there is a proposal to adjust the annual option payment under the option agreement from 100 to 25,000. I would suggest that we also ask that the amendment include language to have Win Stanley, if they pull away from this agreement, to return the Tryon domain names back to the IDA. Okay, because we had agreed to give that to them as part of the original purchase and sale agreement. But in the event that there's a termination or a separation, that they agree to give us those domain names back. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
and would this be for the following 2 years or 1 year?
So what I'd like to do is make a motion that we accept the $25,000 modification with the language you just stipulated, Jim, about receiving our domain names back, and that we keep it within the 2-year time frame that remains on the original agreement. That's my motion.
And I'll second that motion.
Discussion.
I would like to make it just a 1 year contract.
Any further discussion? So the motion is to accept the change of the annual option payment from 100 to 25 and to request a return of the domain name if there is going to be a separation between the IDA and Win Stanley. And it would stay as the.
And keep the mowing.
So maybe you want to put in, keep the mowing as well?
He has agreed, yes.
Okay.
Yes, he has agreed to that, so. Everybody understand the motion? Joe, do you understand the motion?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
2. Joe. Joe Gillis, was that a aye or nay?
Aye.
Aye, okay,
Aye in favor of the motion.
very good. Motion passes by a vote of 5 to 1. Okay. Our backup generator project, there's really no change there. For whatever reason, is trying to get a technician out there to connect this system is been a challenge. The burial health, sales tax exemption, again, there's no updates or changes to, where that is. And we can talk about that a little further in executive session. Moving on to new business, our annual invoice from Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth for their legal services provided to the IDA over the past year. Totals $59.62.50. Joe, would you please have the pleasure?
I would love to make a motion to pay that bill.
Is there a second?
I'm not Grinch all the time, you know.
Fine, Todd.
I look on there for another 30 seconds, but
Is there a second to that motion?
Yes, there is.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, regarding the county's development strategy, last month we looked at the component dealing with housing. You had a number of suggested changes attached to your agenda. Is the portion of the request for proposals dealing with the scope of work. If we could all go to that page that starts at the top, Fulton County Development Strategy. Towards the end of your package. All right. So what we've had so far is input from you folks. Ron and Ken have looked at it also, have given us some feedback. And based upon the feedback we've received so far, this is kind of where the RFP currently stands. We've changed it from an updated strategy to calling it a new strategy. Kind of that was one of Ron's points, which I thought was well taken. It's technically maybe an update, but we're going to call it the development of a new strategy. It's going to have three components: economic development, housing, and tourism. And so looking at starting on that first page is economic development. It starts with just a little bit of background about our current economic development program. And then on the next page is into the scope of work. Okay, which is where the under item B. And for each of these components, what we're going to have are roundtable meetings where we're going to get a group of people who are involved and associated with each of these three components, and they're going to differ from economic development to tourism to housing, and use that group to guide the discussion about each individual component. So for the economic development component, there'll be the Board of Supervisors, the two cities, the towns, the villages, the CRG, IDA, Gloversville Water Board, Wastewater Treatment Plant, Grid, banks, realtors. All of them will be asked to come to the table and have a discussion about our current economic development program, talk about county strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and make some suggestions in terms of how we can build upon our strengths and deal with our weaknesses. And that's going to be a consistent theme for all three components.
I would add developers to that list too.
Okay. What do you mean developer? Give me a.
So when you talk about realtors, the realtors in the county, represent buyers and sellers.
Mhm.
They're not developing any properties in the two counties. So when, now that the zoning has been changed over at Crossroads, we can engage a realtor. The realtor is only going to field, in my opinion, field phone calls that they receive and may not be proactive in going out. What we need to do is attract, or at least hear from a developer, and the developer can say what we need: site control. We need to know what the zoning is. We need to know what the permitting process is. We need to know who we need to apply to. I think it's helpful for those to hear from the developers, or what we've talked about, that what roadblocks they see, and then what we can help make that process as efficient as possible.
Fair enough. We can put those in there.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Is one of the things that we're working on, but I don't see it here, so maybe I'm just missing it, is that, extension of the city sewer lines that are going on? Is there some group there that's gonna speak to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott can certainly,
Yeah, we can
county can certainly.
Yeah.
And again,
That's important.
we didn't mention every specific thing that's going on here. That'll, when we get
Sure.
to these roundtables.
Yeah.
I mean, the first roundtable would all, for economic development, would likely talk about the county sewer system project.
Mhm.
And obviously we would also be sharing with the consultant, the details of that,
Mhm.
where it's going, when it's gonna happen, things of that nature, because obviously that will have a potential
Right.
impact
Yeah.
on our ability to promote development in the county.
Yeah,
So,
okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to tourism, kind of the same concept there. Talk about some background in terms of what tourism is currently in the county. And then the scope of work at the top of the next page, we would have a tourism roundtable focusing on tourism. And that would involve, the Board of Supervisors, the Tourism Bureau, the Chamber, the cities, the towns, the villages, the CRG, IDA, and again, there may be others. Okay, these are just at a minimum. And again, start, talking about the program, talk about our strengths and weaknesses, identify potential projects, and initiatives to help strengthen the county's tourism program.
The other one I would add to the list in A is the mountain biking trails.
And would you add the Paul Niagara Center under the arts? Would you want to identify that?
Sure.
It's kind of. Yeah. I understand.
Roller skating.
Every time I go to Wheelerville in the summer, that parking lot is full.
Mhm.
And then the second parking lot they have is one too.
And then back down under housing, again, the background, we talked about this housing study that was done, some of the more current issues listed on the next page. Talk about the existing housing programs in the county, again, just background information for the consultant. And then get into the scope of work, same thing, housing roundtable meetings. A long list of folks here, at our last meeting, you folks suggested adding in the SD Senior Apartments, the 52 Church Street, project. You add a couple of housing developers, Helmut and Trish. You mentioned Department of Social Services, adding them onto the list of folks here. You also, Dave, you had suggested having the consultant come to some school boards.
Mhm.
Put that in there, to get and I'm thinking Johnstown, Gloversville, Port Alvin.
The bigger districts.
Because those, they're the three biggest
Mhm.
districts, okay? And then, again, the same concept, based upon all the input received, come up with some suggestions and recommendations for inclusion into the development strategy.
One quick question about the economic development component
Yep.
that's under the scope of work. I'm wondering if there would be some wisdom in bringing in some of the larger employers on that, like the hospital, Lexington,
Benjamin Moore,
Benjamin Moore, Fayette,
Walmart.
Walmart,
Mhm.
yeah.
You can do that.
I just think that would be a good private side perspective on a lot of the issues that
Good
are.
point. And I think I'll just put in there large employers,
Mhm.
not necessarily being specific.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that, if that's okay. Okay. Very good. Any conceptually, the concept of three components and having separate roundtable groups to provide input to each of those components. Does that sound like a reasonable approach? The other approach would be to have one singular roundtable that provides input on all three.
No, I think you'll separate them.
This gets as much information from everybody input as you can get,
Yeah.
I don't remember the first time around. What was the data collection process for that?
Well, that's not in here. There's a whole separate component that we're gonna ask the consultant to put together a county profile. And in there, we have listed, a host of different types of, data to collect.
Understood. I see this as a data collection, anecdotal data, but data nonetheless.
Mhm.
It's people centric. You're asking people's opinions about what can or should be done under each of these buckets of interest. What was done the first time around to collect the same kind of information? I don't remember if there was anything.
The first time around?
Yeah, for the county's
How did
first
they do it?
attempt at an economic development plan. Did they do, I know they didn't break it down quite like this, but did they do any kind of
They did
roundtable?
some. They did some. What this time around, we're expanding on that
Mhm.
and having that's one of the first tasks that the consultant's gonna do is to do this whole data collection.
Mhm.
And it's gonna include all types of data involving economic, social, population, workforce, a number of things. And we're gonna ask the consultant to identify key observations, trends, whatever the case may be. All right, and as we then transition into these individual components, when we get into economic development, and at that first economic development roundtable, one of the first things the consultant's gonna do is to share with the group their findings relative to trends and observations from the data that they collected. And then to do the same with housing, and then do the same with tourism.
Mhm.
Okay?
I have a,
First time around, we had a larger group, meeting at the Holiday Inn, I believe, and they broke it out into breakout sessions.
I
think
kind
it
of
was.
vaguely remember that, yeah.
That was. That's what this was concentrated on.
it's important not to have the groups too big. So I'm bringing this, realizing it may be a too big thing, but one of the things I always try to do, I always try to play the part of what's not written here or what might we not be hearing from when I'm looking at new information. And so the question I had coming to myself was, where's the voice of youth? And whether that's representatives of kids from the student government or economics class, seniors, or I don't know what, but somewhere it would be really lovely to have that from multiple school districts. Whether it's a separate circle, I don't.
Yeah, what will keep them here?
And what do they see? Because sometimes the kids have really great insight because they're busy, in the county and they see things. And sometimes they don't understand that the struggle for growth, they think everybody else, all you guys are taking care of it.
Yeah.
Well, you are, but
Right.
their turn's coming up.
Let's see how we can, where we can fit that in, Leslie. We'll
It's
take
just
look
a
at that.
thought,
no,
yeah.
Good point. Any other?
I just hope that, I do think it's definitely to do it in the 3 different divisions like that, but I just know the way, even having meetings with just the 4 of you guys, you and Ron and John Stead and Scott. I guess they're just gonna have to set dates with whoever is hired. They're gonna say, these are the dates. You better be here because this is very, very important. You can't just say, oh, I can't, I'm on vacation. I know there's gonna be some exceptions, but you can't just have half the players just show up that should be there, so.
Yeah, and there's gonna
I guess-
have to be a mechanism for someone who's invited to a meeting but can't attend to still be able to provide their input,
Right, you can still have.
some type of.
Right.
we'll have to-
You can do Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, whatever it takes. Joe's participating remotely today.
Right.
And it's not like it requires a quorum to conduct business.
Right.
They're just informational meetings, so.
But if someone physically can't participate,
Yeah.
that we'll have to have a mechanism for that person to still provide their input.
Right,
So-
no, I just hope that everyone says this is super important because this is our
Right.
next big chance of
Mhm.
making Fulton County work better.
We can't drag people to
I know.
participate. You can invite, you can encourage, you can ask,
I know.
but in the end, if somebody says, I don't want to. So we have these, individuals and organizations identified. Hopefully, they will all be willing to allocate some time in their busy schedules. The time will tell.
I hope so.
All right. Very good. Going back to our agenda, we're on page 5. Crossroads Business Park zoning. The Common Council did give final approval to changing the zoning for the Crossroads Business Park. The change added the following uses as allowed uses: townhomes, condos, market rate apartments, and single family housing. The council also approved changing the name of that zoning district from Crossroads Business Park to just Crossroads Park Zone. Okay, so with that, my question to you folks is, what do you wish to do? Is there something you wish to undertake or do now? Do you wish to, put together a marketing brochure? Do you want to hire a realtor? Do you want to market it yourself? Do you want to market the entire park or just a component, a piece of the park? Open for discussion.
Yeah, I think you and I had a discussion when we talked last week in prep for this meeting is what makes sense is probably when you go into the park, the left.
Yes. 10 acres or so?
Yeah,
Yes.
that'd be the first area I think that you will promote. And I think you need to prepare some kind of marketing brochure. I know we've had discussions previously about developers want site control.
We have it.
We have, right. So that's number one hurdle. 2, they want to know what zoning is. We now know what the zoning is. And then 3, I think just the permitting process was obviously under the city of Gloversville planning board, right, Scott? Right. So we may have to involve the planning board early in the process and get them. No, you're not going to have a detail, but conceptually what we're thinking about promoting over there, just so they know who we're pursuing.
So when we talk about creating a marketing brochure, are we talking about a printed piece of paper or conceptually something different, like a web page on our website?
I pictured like what we had when we had the pictures of the Hells Mills extension and we showed, or even our land, they showed a road in and possible roadways and a visual, which obviously is just a dream or whatever like that, but it shows that you can put it smaller houses along with stuff. So I think that it would be like, this is what it could be.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's
that
like-
implies that we gotta get somebody on board to create that vision, that graphic, whatever that ends up being, whether it's an aerial map or some sort of perspective view of it. I'd like to suggest, we've got this website that's seemingly being managed and such. Rather than going through the expense of printing things that I think just wind up in the circular file. We just keep everything on the website. And if we really needed to have a handout to somebody, if we're gonna have a table somewhere or whatever, the thing these days is everybody's going to the QR codes. So a business card with a QR code, you can hand to somebody. They can look at the QR code with their phone. It takes them right to the website and they can see all the information that we need. That way, maybe you pay for 500 business cards with a QR code on it, and you're not going through a large printing cost and managing all that paper that ends up in the landfill.
Right, you create a brochure, but then what are you gonna do with the brochure?
Right.
What's your next step?
Right.
I mean, if having a stack sitting here does us no good.
Right.
So, consensus to put something together and for just that one.
For the website.
The 10 acres
For that
of
one-
left side, yes.
So I think what we need to do is just define the tract of land, show where water, sewer, gas, electric is. And put some, a sketch together. Do you wish to market for any type of housing?
Whatever's
Or-
allowed. Everything that's acceptable.
Whatever's allowed.
Okay,
Jim, could I ask a question here? I've been in and out, so I might have missed something. Has the city said that they want to develop Kathy's Way or Sal Landrio Drive? My inkling is Kathy's Way has no development on it, and that'd be better for residential versus Sal Landrio Drive has Epimed So I would like to see, in my mind, South Landry Road Drive stays as the business park and Kathy's Way is residential. That's just my thought. I don't know if the city had any input on that.
That's what the board's talking about, Joe, is to focus on just on Kathy's Way.
Okay,
To carve out that chunk of land on Kathy's Way and develop a concept plan for there and not to look at the upper part on Sal Landry
Okay.
Drive. You
good.
know, all right.
Yep, thank you.
What we can do is well, I guess there's two ways to do this marketing information. You do it, and then if you're gonna bring a realtor on board, give it to the realtor, or bring the realtor on board and let them put it together.
What realtors would we invite for a proposal?
That'd be up to you folks.
Like Coldwell Banker and Howard Hanna, those are the two biggest ones around here right now. I would think we could interview them and see what they could do, just like we had Berkshire Hathaway and Cushman Wakefield come in and say, let them do some work. Like you said, Mike said, a lot of times they'll just sit there and man the phones. Well, if they're gonna have some skin in the game, they're gonna say, we're going to do this. Let them set up a QR code, or let them, they think it's old school, we'll do the brochures. Let them figure, they've got the mechanisms to do it. I think, let them do a little bit of.
What we can do is, if you like, is contact both, ask them both to submit proposals to us relative to how they would look to market, what type of marketing materials they would be willing to put together, and what kind of fee they would charge to if we were to engage them. And then we could review those proposals. If you wish to then do an interview, you could follow it up by doing an interview and do it that way.
That'd be fair.
So,
Any others besides those two? I mean, is any other thoughts? I don't know any other bigger ones.
I think they have a fairly wide network,
Yes.
so, okay, we can do that. All right. Moving on, the New York State Economic Development Council and Empire State Development are working with Newmark Global Strategy to evaluate semiconductor sector capabilities in New York State. One component in that evaluation was to identify potential sites for semiconductor companies. At Ron's suggestion, I submitted Tryon as a potential site for a semiconductor business. There is a major push by the state. And if you saw yesterday, Senator Schumer was in town talking about how we're going to be investing more dollars into the SUNY NAPTech Center down in Albany. So the semiconductor business, there's certainly going to be a major push by New York State to try and build upon what they've already got going here. And who knows, maybe Tryon could be a site for one of those semiconductor businesses here in the future. So, but to do so, we took the step to submit the site, and we'll see what happens.
And just to add to that, I mentioned this to Jim the other day. I talked to Greg a couple of meetings ago because FM has a clean room on campus, and they've been having programs in their electrical program to place students, mainly global power most recently, but obviously you've got Wolf Speed Cree, which is now in Rome and Marcy. You've got the big announcement on Micron in Syracuse. You've got Global Foundries in Malta. You've got the Nanotech Center at the SUNY campus, which is separate from SUNY. And IBM's making a significant investment in Poughkeepsie too. If you kind of in the middle of that is Fulton County for vendors. The bank's executive team is really focused on that corridor. We know we're not going to run into a Micron or Global Foundries, but obviously companies that we have relationships with could be vendors to those companies. And some are whether it's industrial piping, construction. So Greg put me in touch with his staff at the college We had an initial meeting last week. We're gonna follow up early January. I think the bank wants to sponsor a conference at part of that will be towards the clean room, maybe get some people from the industry to speak. I can't remember the lady's name at, New York State Economic Development Corp. That's specific to the semiconductor industry. She's from Herkimer County. She's a very good speaker. I think we could make a large group of that. I talked about Jim having the IDE be involved, maybe if we got a marketing or Tryon, identify that we've got a site that's available for those. I just think it'd be a good spotlight and showcase for the county of what we have to offer and the capabilities that FM has. I think really it's kind of a hidden gem that people don't talk about, so.
Keep us posted, maybe IDA sponsorship opportunity there, if something does materialize, to have the IDA's name prominently displayed there. So just keep us posted on that development, so, great. Last item under our monthly board training. We're each year, we are supposed to be reviewing the IDA's internal financial control system to see if there's any tweaks or changes that the board would like to make. Going to go through quickly in summary form how we handle cash and checks and things of that nature, which I think you're all aware, but just to go through under cash receipts. Basically, when we get cash come in, the CFO takes that, makes copies and does a deposit. And then all accounts then are reconciled monthly. Checks going out, all purchases shall be made per our procurement property. Invoices are received, they're reviewed by the CFO. She then sends it to me to review and I have to sign off on that. We have a form each that is attached to every invoice. If an invoice has prior authorization from this board, the invoice is paid. If it hasn't had prior authorization and needs it, I bring it here to a meeting for you folks to approve. Then the check is issued. All IDA checks have to have 2 signatures, one by the CFO, one from a member of the audit committee. Budget reports, they're prepared regularly. You see all those in each month. Quarterly tax returns are prepared by Weston Company. The IDA treasurer comes in every quarter to sign those forms. If the treasurer is not available, and any member of the audit committee can come in and sign those quarterly tax returns. Bank statements you folks see those every month as part of the monthly bank reconciliations. And lastly, with treasury bills, we invest in treasury bills. It's the ID's board's decision to do so. It's the CFO basically does what the IDA board suggests. We each year, Carol and I go through these to see if there was any changes needed based upon this past year. We don't recommend any changes. We think the system is working fairly well. I guess I would ask members of the audit committee who, again, you look at these monthly reconciliations. If you folks, anyone think that there should be a change or an adjustment made to our internal financial controls? If not, at your annual meeting, right, you have to adopt a certification saying that we've gone through this process. And we've just gone through this process, and so we can proceed with that at our annual meeting next month. Last, before going into executive, just wanted to acknowledge that the gentleman sitting to my right will be departing from the board at the end of this year. He's our second longest tenured board member. He's been with the board for 15 years. And we'd just like to thank him for his commitment and time that he spent over the years serving on this board. So Todd, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And make sure your golf game's still in good shape next year.
I'm gonna work on
With that, I'd like to ask for someone to make a motion to go into executive for the reasons cited on page 9 of your agenda. Greg? Mike? Leslie, thank you.
Thank you so much and Merry Christmas to all of you.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. And we're in, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we're into executive at 9:07 a.m.
For our meeting for January 9th at Union Hall and
Yes.
Oh, we did secure union.
yes, I
Yes,
talked to Megan and.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will be sending notice around to everyone on that. It's gonna be Tuesday, January 9th. Meeting will here be at 4 in the afternoon.
I have to be there by 5:30. I'll
Yep.
talk to her.
I will try to minimize what we have on the agenda for that purpose. So, motion to close. Greg,
I'll second.
Mike, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Good job.
9:23 a.m. Look at that. Shortest meeting of the year, your last
bad.
one.